Okay, everyone, we're going to get started here. So if you can just take your seat, we're going to have our next panel come up. I think Mary's clearing out the hallway to get folks back in the room. But I see some note cards up in the basket, so thank you. But if you have filled out your note card or anything like that, please feel free to, you can put it on our table over there or give it to Mary or I. So we can give those to Dr. Buckhalter. Yep. Oh, Jeff, we got another card for you. I think we're up to 3 cards right now. So thank you, everyone. Good. A few more people. Oh, you got another card, Jeff. I feel like we're doing a raffle.
Probably a good idea to open.
Yeah, I got you.
That's a preemptive way to open them.
Thinking through, smart.
That's a sticker, so maybe.
Oh,
I think, yeah.
there you go.
I was just gonna open them.
Yeah,
Gotta
don't
be
go through the
smarter.
sticker. Yeah.
Gotta be
I
smarter
was
than
gonna
life.
lie, yeah. Okay. Maybe let them
Oh, we got another one.
There you go.
Okay, so we'll get started as people are starting to get settled. So as Mary said, this panel is one that we do annually, and this was one that Maggie referenced that started her advocacy and, kind of, her grief journey and Molly projects and everything when David spoke last year. So we like to do this one annually. So it's an interactive panel discussion. So we'll have time for Q&A afterwards. So think of your questions as our speakers are sharing their stories. It's an opportunity, as Mary talked about, to learn from our individuals who've lost loved ones and how they've turned their grief into action or their mourning into mission. I know everyone kind of refers to it differently, the work that they do in honor of their loved ones. So we have some fabulous advocates and speakers with us today. We have Tracy and Tim. They're the mother and brother of Genevieve. She was diagnosed with intractable epilepsy at 17 years old and passed away from SUDEP by 21. Their mission has since been to raise awareness and to find a cure. Thank you for joining us. And we have Liz, who is a proud mom of Will, who lived with SCN8-9 genetic disorder and died from SUDEP in 2017 at the age of 7. In her capacity as a volunteer with the Acute Syndrome Foundation, Liz provides bereavement support and grants advising. Thank you for being here, Liz. And here is the clicker. We start with our speakers. And then we'll start with Tracy and Tim. You can either sit or you can come up here, whatever you're most comfortable with.
I'll sit. I'm good. So I just click where?
Yep. You just click that one to go next.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Tracy. This is my son, Tim. We're here to tell you about our journey of turning grief into action. I tag all my social media as a mother and a brother in a search for a cure, and I kind of think that sums up the overall arching theme of our path. But I'm going to quickly start at the beginning. My daughter, Genevieve Gutierrez, was born 1992, August 27th. She went by Jen or Gigi to most. Growing up, I was kind of a young mom, so we were more like sisters, but we were best friends. Around the time she was in middle school, she started experiencing these strange infections that were causing very high fevers for prolonged periods of time. We later found out it was an allergic reaction that we were able to get under control, but we felt a sigh of relief from that, and then we thought that everything was going to be okay, but it was not. Well, we will never know for sure if the high fevers were the genesis of her epilepsy. We have reason to believe that it might have contributed to it. Slide 2. Sorry. Around high school, she was just acting like a normal teenager, and the last thing she wanted to do was hang out with her mom, so I didn't catch the little tics that she was experiencing at the time. And to be honest, I'm not even sure she recognized them. They were subtle and hard to explain. I would later find that she was noticing time lapses. She was having trouble with her memory. She started having trouble in school. struggling with her schoolwork. She was having unexplained bruises, and so she was sore, achy. So telling that to a doctor is really difficult. We're not sure what that means. So it took us a long time to figure out what was going on. Needless to say, she was experiencing absence seizures in the beginning, and then she was having tonic-clonic seizures in the middle of the night. Everything came to a head one night. She went and spent the night at my sister's house. They were awoke in the middle of the night to banging on the wall, and when they came in, she was having a full tonic-clonic seizure. But to say that we would have recognized it as epilepsy, no. Even my brother-in-law, who's a seasoned paramedic and fireman, didn't recognize it. To me, it looked like she was having a drug overdose. And so we went to the hospital, and by the time we got to the hospital, she's alert and awake, and so they don't even know. It's taking us a long time to figure out what's happening. It took us a year to figure out what was happening, and for an actual doctor to witness, even though we were trying to tape them, but getting it under an MRI and any kind of testing was really difficult. But we didn't know what to do, so we started researching. We started looking for any answers that we could find, hoping for somebody to give us some direction. Although she was having multiple type of seizures, most of the time now she was having generalized seizures, and so she was not eligible for VNS or surgery. We tried every anti-seizure medication, every cocktail combination. Nothing worked. The medication might work for a couple of weeks, but the first time she had her first breakthrough seizure, we were back to square one. We looked for clinical trials. I quit my job looking for a job with better insurance. I paid out of pocket enough to buy a house in cash, looking for anybody to give me an answer, a direction, anything that I was willing to fight my way there. Couldn't find anything. But in the meantime, I find out that 1 in 26 people have seizures in their lifetime, and I'm thinking to myself, what? How is this happening? How is this true? I know 26 people. I know 52 people. Might even know 104 people. How did I not know all of this is happening? So in addition to us trying to figure out what's going on, the guilt of not knowing, how could I have not recognized this sooner? My one job is to parent and keep my kids safe, and I can't do anything. Well, it turns out I do know people with epilepsy. Turns out there's a lot of people that have to deal with seizures, and now I know, and now I can't unknow that information. We were never able to get her seizure truly under control. No matter how much we searched, no matter what we did, we could not find anything to give us hope. On Memorial Day, on the fateful morning of May 26th, 2014, she was just 21 years of age. Suit claimed the life of my beautiful Genevieve.
Hello, my name is Timothy, and I am the brother of Genevieve Gutierrez, but to me, she just went by my Gigi. The year I was born, my sister was diagnosed with epilepsy, and at the time, I never understood how much pain, how everything she went through on a daily basis. Even though I was the baby of the family, most of the attention went to her because she needed it more. However, Gigi made it her goal for me to be the child she could never have. My sister and I were inseparable, and we would love doing everything together. We were both the biggest USC fans and would like to watch all their games together. Even though things seemed like they could have started to look up from here, it just became worse. As time continued on, she would consistently have more frequent seizures, And even though I was just 5 years old at the time, I had to learn to turn on her side and to not panic when she would have a seizure. On the day of May 26, 2014, epilepsy took the life of my sweet sister. I just got up like I usually do in the morning to crawl in bed with her and watch cartoons, but I couldn't understand why she wouldn't wake up. I was too young at the time to realize that she was really gone and she wasn't going to come back. Knowing she wasn't going to come out of her room to start singing and dancing hurt me deeply, and I'll never get to hear her voice again. To this day, it feels like I was robbed of the amount of time I should have had with her, and I kept feeling like there was a hole inside of me and nothing could fill it again. But it all started to change when my mom met two people, Susan and Rebecca from the Epilepsy Foundation, and they were there to help us through that hard time. They helped us turn our sadness and anger into something that could help somebody else. It was through them that we could reach out to others with that same sadness we had, and in turn learn to cope losing our loved one. One thing that sticks to me a lot is something my mom tells me every day before I go to school. She says, every day is a new opportunity to help someone. And I used to think it was just something my mom would say just to say, and I never really grasped it. But until recently, it made me realize that every day really is a new opportunity to change someone's life. All of our minds hold great power in the world, and all the bad things it shows us. We just have to use that power for good. I use this when I see others who struggle with disabilities, and it brings me to have more compassion to help others who with disabilities. My fault. It brings me to have more compassion for those who suffer, and it motivates me to want to help more. I can't bring back the time I had with Jen, and I will never get to see her again or hear her voice, but I can use her name to continue my fight to end epilepsy. Thank you.
So this kind of leads me to the crux of the story, which is when I lost my daughter, to say that I was angry was the biggest understatement ever. I'd never heard of epilepsy, so now it seems like a lot of people have been that angry as well. I didn't know she was in the highest percentile of people who were susceptible to epilepsy. I was looking for a place to put my sadness and my anger, someplace to store my heart. And so in all my research, I stumbled across the Epilepsy Foundation, and they would listen to all my crazy harebrained ideas, and they would let me cry, and they would let me talk, and they would let me share my story. And like lightning struck me. I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? She's gone. What am I going to do? What can I do? I'm one person. What can I do? Well, 2 grieving people suddenly became hundreds of people. We all just kind of kicked into gear and took an example from my Jen. She used to like photography, and she had all these social media accounts where she would do these photo challenges. And so we thought, why not start a campaign and ask people to post something beautiful, anything that they thought was beautiful, and do one random act of kindness and tag it as the 100 Days of Jen. And then we asked them to do it for 100 days. Well, it exploded. People I'd never met before were posting just beautiful things, butterflies, landscapes, happy faces, babies, puppies, anything that they saw beauty in, and they were tagging my Genevieve. And that made me feel good for a little bit, but it wasn't enough. And so I mobilized everybody I knew. Every person I could think of, I was not ashamed to tug on their heartstrings and say, just give me $25 and walk with me. Walk with me at the Rose Bowl. Have fun. We'll all do this together. And somehow I rallied 200 people. And then next year, 300 people came. And I was like, I don't know, can I keep this up? Is this realistic? I don't know, but that's how Jen's Dare to Dream team was born. And we called it Jen's Dare to Dream team because no matter what happened to my kid, she never stopped believing that she was awesome and that she could do anything she put her mind to. Then we started a annual dinner to launch our team parties, and we donate the money in her name. And then we headed to Washington, D.C., and we decided we were going to lobby for some reform and research. But it wasn't enough. It never felt like it was enough. We started an art therapy group. We had a family support group. Wasn't enough for me. We started a scholarship at our local community college that she was attending, and we asked people to write an essay. For anybody with any disability, I did not discriminate to any disability. I just said, tell me why it hasn't stopped you from daring to dream. And they did. And there were just hundreds of letters coming in. And so we kept it going. But it wasn't enough for me. I joined the board of the Epilepsy Foundation, Los Angeles. And I jumped on any committee they allowed me on, and I tried everything I could. I don't have a lot of talents, but I can sew. So we made quilts and we raffled them. We got everybody together to donate material, and we made pillowcases, and we would bring them into the local pediatric or neurology departments at the hospital so that these kids could have something that belonged to them at a dark time in their life. It wasn't enough. We brought the big brain exhibits to school, and we talked about seizure safety to children and to teachers and provided them information on how to handle seizures and how we could handle brain safety and seizure safety, and it wasn't enough. Last year, I came up with another harebrained idea to try a comedy event. Why not bring some laughter to something really dark? I wanted to laugh a little bit, so I managed to get some comedians together, and we got a spot at the Brea Improv, and we tried that too. I'm always looking for something, and thankfully the Epilepsy Foundation of Los Angeles has allowed me to do that. I didn't start a foundation, but all of these are, any profit we get from it goes straight to the foundation. Genevieve will leave a mark on history. The greatest part of being here for me is being able to speak my daughter's name and just say Genevieve in front of a lot of people. Any parent who has lost a child knows that the best way to shut down any conversation in any scenario is to talk about your child who has passed. Nobody's mean. Nobody wants to be hurtful. They just don't know what to say. They don't know how to react. I can hear about little Johnny's baseball and little Susie's dance recitals, but if I say my kid was in a rock band, she played guitar and wrote music and she rocked, I'm wanting to smile about that, and I want to be able to share those kinds of things with other people. My goal is to be able to speak about her legacy with happiness and smiles because she contributed so much to the world. She went to culinary school. She met and cooked with Gordon Ramsay. She wrote music and poetry. She danced ballet in Polynesian. She was fearless. So much so that even on her darkest days, most people didn't even know she had epilepsy. She would put aside her own problems to listen to other people cry on her shoulder. She was famous for her giggles and her ambush hugs. She loved far more than her frail body could hold. I picked this quote here because she always had inspirational quotes all over her room, and I feel like this one captured her spirit the best. I believe in being strong when everything seems to be going wrong. I believe happy girls are the prettiest girls. And I believe tomorrow is another day. And I believe in miracles. It's been 10 years. And I can't bring my daughter back. But I can mobilize my energy, my sadness, and my anger so that hopefully less people have to feel like this. I can fight so that I can say her name, and it will evoke all the magic and the miracles that she put forward in this world because she existed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tracy and Tim. Appreciate it. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Liz Ramirez, and I am a volunteer with the Cute Syndrome Foundation. We are a foundation that raises awareness of SCN8A genetic disorders. We fund research, and closest to my heart, we support families living with an SCN8A genetic disorder. Now, a little bit about our name, because we always get asked, why the Cute Syndrome Foundation? Our founder, Dr. Hilary Savoie, before her daughter was diagnosed, her daughter wasn't developing typically, so people would ask, what's wrong with your daughter? And so she would always say, she has the cute syndrome, so that name stuck. Our kids are indeed very cute. Another one of my titles is Will's mom. My son, Will, lived with an SCN8A genetic disorder during his short life. And so I'll share with you all a little bit of our story as a family. On the right-hand side is a photo, probably the last family photo of us. On the left-hand side is my husband, who's here in the audience supporting me, Michael, so thank you for being here. In orange, this was back in 2017. In the orange shirt is our older son, Ethan, who was 10 at the time. He's now 17 and a whole foot taller than I am. And in the green shirt is our younger son, Will, who had epilepsy caused by a mutation to the SCN8A gene. Will had his first seizure at a very young age, about 10 months old. After that, we tried pretty much every anti-seizure medication that was out there to varying degrees of success. Some medications actually helped with seizure control. Other things actually made things worse, unfortunately. Eventually, he was determined to have intractable seizures that we found out later on was due to a mutation to the SCN8A gene. There were times in Will's life where he had decent seizure control, other times where he was having unstoppable seizure activity, like 30 a day, including status epilepticus, which would land him in the hospital. That lower left-hand corner is a photo of one of our ER visits with my husband holding him in the ER bed. The quality of Will's life and the quality of our life as a family was really directly related to the level and degree of seizure control we had at any given time with Will. But in spite of his epilepsy, Will was a really happy, silly guy, as you can tell from the upper left-hand corner. He loved going to school. He made his own friendships and relationships at school. We loved, as a family, going Saturday mornings, packing up the car, going to the beach and playing in the sand and playing in the water. Will was just a real people person. He loved people, and he was a pure joy to be around. But in the summer of 2017, just shortly after this last family photo of us was taken, he was seven and a half at the time. He was experiencing decent seizure control at the time, which for us was a relative term, about once a week. He had just finished first grade that summer, and on the night of July 16th, I told him for the last time, good night, buddy. I love you, like I always did, as my husband was putting him to bed. And that ended up being the last time I got to be with him here on this earth, because the next morning, July 17th, we thought he was sleeping in, went to go check on him and found that he had passed of SUDEP that night. I'm very grateful that we were already plugged into the Cute Syndrome Foundation at the time of Will's death. We have an online support group where we get to ask questions of each other. We really get to share our heartbreaks and our victories, and then just generally walk alongside each other in our unique journeys. That virtual support is really critical, because living with a rare genetic epilepsy can be really lonely and terrifying. So they had already become my virtual community, and I was so grateful for them. It did take me about 2.5 years after Will's death to feel like I had the energy to do anything beyond just survive and try to show up for my family as best as I could. And so about 2.5 years after Will's death, I started to have a little bit of more energy and I wanted to plug into something meaningful. And so that's when I started to plug in as a Acute Syndrome Foundation volunteer. But it took about 2.5 years because I really needed the time to really grieve heavily, right? And so speaking to today's theme of turning grief into action, for me anyways, there needed to be quite a long pause between the grief and the action. So a little bit about the grief journey and turning grief into action. First of all, if you are grieving, if you're here in this room and you're grieving, just want to encourage you to take all the time that you need to tend to the grief, support yourself in the grief, and allow the grief process to run its course. For me, that looked like talking, crying, writing a lot. All my family worked with a therapist, all 3 of us did. Also really important to realize and combat the myths surrounding grief. There's a lot of myths surrounding grief, like grief should only last a certain amount of time. It should only look a certain way, right? We're told we should be strong during our grief, or, maybe don't say that person's name anymore because it's going to make them more sad, right? All those things are very untrue and actually can really complicate the grief, which is already hard enough on its own, right? So really important to realize and combat myths around grief. And then also just really important to take care of yourself in every domain that you're experiencing the grief, right? The grief touches every part of us. So emotionally, physically, spiritually, relationally. It's very critical to find people who will come alongside you and be non-judgmental about your grief process, who will just sit with you, witness your pain, and generally support you in an empathetic manner. So again, at first, we're just trying to survive the loss. But after we've spent some time maybe processing some of our feelings, we might find that we have bits of energy here and there to start looking to the future. But rebuilding our future doesn't mean that we're going to go back to what it was before, right? That's impossible after a significant loss, right? Rebuilding just means picking up the pieces and putting them together in a very different way, right? Because a significant piece is missing and you have to kind of refigure your life. So second bullet point, if you are ready to look to the future again and maybe rebuild your life after a significant loss, I would say start with something that feels doable, meaningful, and maybe a good fit for you given whatever your talents and interests are, right? It could mean plugging into an already existing organization. Maybe that's meaningful to you or perhaps was meaningful to your loved one who you've lost. And it's important to remember, right, our relationship with our loved one that you've lost, it doesn't end with their death, right? I will never stop loving Will. That is impossible. But I do feel connected to him just in a different way whenever I do anything in honor of him. So a little bit about my volunteer work with the Acute Syndrome Foundation. One way that I honor and remember and continue to hold space for my life, for Will in my life, is volunteering with the Acute Syndrome Foundation. I get to do that with 2 other SCN8A moms who are here today, Shelly and Casey, so thank you for being here to support. Again, I started with something that was doable. I wanted to plug in, but I didn't know how. And so we have monthly meetings, and they were talking about researchers and science that I couldn't really follow, but I can type pretty well, and we needed a note taker, so I volunteered by saying, hey, I can be the note taker for our meetings. I started doing that in 2019, so very small, right? And then the following year was 2020 when the pandemic hit, right? So there was an opportunity for me to get myself involved in some grant writing. I enjoy technical writing and editing, which most people despise, but that's my thing. So I jumped in on that, and we were awarded a grant through the Child Neurology Foundation to provide social and emotional support programming for our families. It was really cool. We did it all virtually, so we did like yoga and martial arts classes via Zoom for our families. We did a virtual book club, which persists to this day. We continue with that. We did meal kit deliveries, access to mindfulness apps, and even a fun food and drink club for our families to connect. Our families are often isolated as it is, and then when the pandemic hit, it was even worse, so we wanted to be able to connect and support families, so that was really neat. And then several years later, I began moderating a bereavement support group for our families. Unfortunately, in our community, we have quite a high mortality rate, so we have a virtual support group for family members who have lost a loved one to SCN8A, and so I continue with that work today. So a couple of mentions about these photos. Left-hand side is Shelly and myself at PAME last year in Orlando. Bottom right-hand corner, another SCN8A mom and I, Karen, we go to Epilepsy Awareness Day at Disneyland and have a Cute Syndrome Foundation table there. And in the upper right-hand corner is a photo of many of our beautiful families. We have an annual Cute Syndrome Foundation gathering every year that we've held since 2015 in conjunction with the American Epilepsy Society's annual meeting. It's a venue for leading clinicians and researchers in the SCN8A community to share their work and connect directly with families, which is a really cool opportunity. We are having our 10th annual gathering this weekend, and we're really excited about it. And last slide. This is a quote from my son, Ethan, just shortly after his brother passed. He said, "It's like we have all of this love for Will, but nowhere for it to go." And I just thought that was so beautiful and poignant and true for a 10-year-old to say. I recently saw the question posed of whether the death of a child is like a life sentence of pain, and I will say it can certainly feel like that at first. That deep sense of missing and longing to be with your child, it doesn't go away. Tracy and I were just talking about that, right? You just learn how to kind of manage and live with it. But when you do feel like you start to have the energy again, you have the opportunity to allow that grief to really fuel your action in memory and in honor of your loved one. So whenever I help contribute to a grant that will help support our families in the SCN8A community, or when I come alongside Shelly or Casey or other Cute Syndrome Foundation volunteers to help improve the lives of our kiddos in our community, or even when I come alongside a newly bereaved parent and let them know that they aren't alone in their journey and that we'll be with them to walk with them, I know that I'm continuing to express my enduring love for Will. Thank you.
Thank you all for sharing Jen and Will with us. When you first sent us these slides, I know Mary and I were like wiping tears. And I'm like, why do I have to come up after this slide? But you clearly all have shown how your love is never ending for your loved ones and how you're, turning your grief into action, and shared such wonderful tips about starting when you can, starting where you can, and what feels right. Like, not feeling you need to dive in and do all of these things right away. You can just start small and then continue to build as, your mission grows and your grief journey continues and all of that. So I think you had some wonderful tips and advice and all of that. So thank you. And we do have time for a question or two. Mary has the mic. So if you raise your hand, I see Lou up here with a question.
Thank you. Not so much a question.
Nope, it should be. Yeah, they just turned it on.
Okay, all right. More a statement. So Tracy, Timothy, and Liz, I really applaud you for getting up here and sharing your story and how you've turned your grief into action. Much like yourselves, we've tried to do the same thing. And I was a panelist last year, and in Nashville 2 years ago, I was able to give a talk. So these are all things that are therapeutic to me. Tracy, your talk in particular really resonated with me because in the 2.5 years, coming up on 3 years on January 30th, that we lost our daughter Brenna at 25, I have just dove into anything that I can, and that's been my therapy. And what really resonated with me was your words, it's never enough, or it wasn't enough. And so, I joined a board of the Epilepsy Association of Cleveland 2.5 years ago, and I've been the chair of many events. We've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it just never seemed to mask the void, the anger void that still resides in me at having 3 kids with epilepsy at some point in their lives. And not once during 26 years of doctor visits were we ever informed about SUDEP. So I think we shifted, we pivoted. My wife, my daughter, and our son Nick too. They're all 100% behind us, and now we are shifting our focus to legislative efforts. So we were in January, we were able to get a House bill passed unanimously, 91-0, that would mandate doctors who treat epilepsy patients that they're mandated to have that conversation in both verbal and written form. So that's kind of how our grief into action journey has morphed and taken some turns along the way. But I really appreciate everything that you do, and I know that everybody in this room is behind you, whether they're meeting you for the very first time or have known you for a little while. So thank you.
Okay, just make a
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you for that. I wanted to say, and it's kind of addressing the question that was heard earlier, which was like, how do you get started? And just me, I'm just kind of an anxious person by nature, so I needed something to funnel that energy into. But it took me a little while, but I don't need to rebuild the wheel. There's amazing foundations out there that need people like all of us to support them. And most of them have different boards and committees that will have committees looking for, legislative change, for research change, for just general funding. You don't have to be a neuroscientist to be able to help the cause. You can just walk. You can just, what is your talent? You can do anything. And I don't know Bill Gates or Taylor Swift. I don't have mega money to donate to this. I just grassroots, $25 at a time. I can manage $25, and I can make you feel bad about not giving me $25. If you would have spent it at McDonald's, it's better spent. I can funnel it into research. And so I just found that the best use of my time and talent was to piggyback off an established foundation. And already here you have the Danny Did, you have the Cameron Boyce, you have the Epilepsy Foundation. All of them have amazing programs that you can piggyback, and all of them would love your time and are willing to take whatever talent you have. And like I said, I sew. What am I going to do with that? Oh, I made a quilt. Let's raffle it. Okay, it made a little bit of money. Let's go on to the next thing. It doesn't take a genius. It just takes a little bit of love and something that you can pour into it and give back to them. So there's lots and lots of ways you can turn that grief into something. And that allows me to say her name over and over again in a way that people are not stopping a conversation anymore. Now it's like, oh, good thing, the silver lining is that Genevieve motivated me and mobilized me and got people doing something that we should have been doing all along. Why wasn't I doing charity work all along? It just brings people's goodness into light.
And I'll just make one comment and then we'll move to our next session. But like you were saying, just using what you already have. So I lead the bereavement services and our bereaved support groups at the Epilepsy Foundation. We pulled Lou in June for Father's Day to be the guest speaker for our adult support group because we wanted someone there for Father's Day, and we encouraged our mostly moms that attend to bring their partner. And we had uncles, we had dads, we had brothers, we had a bunch of males attend that meeting for the first time. And, it was just because we asked Lou if he could be a guest, and he brought, his perspective as a dad who had lost someone, and it was really impactful to the group. So just as we've heard, using what you have, the talents that you have to be able to, put your grief into action, making someone feel guilty for getting that Starbucks instead of donating that money to you, all these different strategies.
You'll never miss it.
Exactly. So a round of applause for our wonderful panelists. And then Mary, if you want to come up, I'll give you guys these. Yeah.
Thanks again. That was a fantastic panel. Okay, I would now like to introduce you to another special guest, Libby Boyce, who will guide us through our last session today. Libby is the president of the Cameron Boyce Foundation. The Cameron Boyce Foundation was established in 2019 and honors the legacy of her son, Cameron Boyce, who was taken by SUDEP. They aim to cure epilepsy through funding research, education, and awareness campaigns. In addition, Libby is a licensed clinical social worker who works for the Los Angeles Department of Health Services and as the Deputy Director of Housing for Health. So we're honored to have Libby with us today.
Thank you, guys. You know, I don't know if there are slides. I think I had a couple slides. Do I use this thingy dingy? Okay, let's see. Let's see if this works. You know, I almost feel like we've talked enough about the Cameron Boyce Foundation. I'm just a mom who lives with grief from losing my child to SUDEP. So I'm a lot like those of you in the audience, some of you living with people with epilepsy and or having lost someone from epilepsy. And for me, in my journey, it's been about 5.5 years. It was really important to me to have people to talk to. And when I was here a couple of years ago, I didn't get a chance to talk to everybody. So I really thought it was an opportunity, since we're all here. Welcome to LA, by the way. So my office is, a couple of blocks away. So it's very convenient for me. And I hope you all have a good time and get out a little bit. But I thought it would be a good option for us to really break up into small groups and tell our story and meet people and connect, because for me, that was a lifeline. And I imagine that's the case for a lot of you that are here. By the way, Tracy, you raised amazing kids. Is Tracy still here? Or did she leave? You raised amazing kids. Tim, I expect big things from you. Oh my God, you're a great speaker. And you're a great support for your mom. I do expect something from you, for sure. We're going to see you in the future, I think. Just really quickly, this was actually a tree that my son drew. He was a prolific artist. The roots, as you see, are much bigger than the tree. What does that mean? That means for him, his roots, his family, his village were the strength of him. And I love this tree, so I put it everywhere. Like I think all of you said, you just want to hear your kid's name. People think they come to you and they think, I shouldn't mention it. It's like, no, mention it. Let's talk about it. Let's, it's there. It's part of us, and it's essential for us to talk about it. I think we sort of covered this, so I'm not going to go there. We have a big outreach. I mean, I think, when Cameron passed away, obviously it was devastating, but it was also like, I don't know another person who's in the public eye who's died of epilepsy that we know of. And so I think we felt we really had this obligation. And he was such a powerful voice, so we just felt like we had to be his voice. And so what we've focused on, because we partnered with all the foundations that have been referenced, and we've learned from all of them, and we all work very well together. And what we had was a group of people who didn't know about epilepsy, all these fans of Cameron. So we had the opportunity to get awareness out there. And so that's really where we focused. And now we're sort of starting to focus a little more into the youth population, just because we recognize that is such a critical a critical juncture when kids are going to college and changing their life events. It's hard on your hormones, and that is a trigger. And that's exactly what happened to Cameron. And so we think it's super, super important to fill a gap and not to replicate efforts, but to be good partners and good shepherds. And that's what we're trying to do. But as you see, we really have quite a following, and we're putting up messages all the time about epilepsy, things that are like, we all know about like the back of our hand, but the general population doesn't. And also supporting people living with epilepsy, giving them tools and knowledge, empowering them is super, super important. So that's essentially what we're all about. And now what I really want us to do is, and I haven't thought about how we'll break up into small groups, but hopefully we'll just do clumps. And I think there's 6 tables. Am I getting the math right? 6 tables around the room. And I provided some prompts, just, thinking about what I would want to talk about and what I will talk about. And so I'm hoping that you all will go into one of the tables and share as much or as little of your story that you're comfortable sharing, ways that you've found help coping, what you've learned negative and positive about yourself and life since your traumatic event, how you've changed, how has your life changed, what do you wish you knew prior to your journey? I think we all have a lot of strong feelings about that, which came up in the research that was presented. How do you celebrate your loved one's memory? What do you consider your support system? And maybe even exchanging some contact information. You don't have to follow this. You can go completely off script, but this is just because I know sometimes with a group of strangers, it's sort of hard to get going. So in thinking about how to break up, any ideas? Do we just do it? Do we just say there's 6 tables, go to one? Want to try that? See where we get?
Yeah,
Is there a better idea?
Yeah, free to do that. And I also just want to put a disclaimer out there. This activity is open to everyone, even if you haven't lost a loved one. Everyone has experienced grief in some way. So this activity is open to everyone. But if you're not comfortable doing this activity, we are not forcing it on to anyone either. So if you're not comfortable with this activity, don't feel like you have to participate. But as Libby said, we always hear we want more networking time, we want more connection. So Mary and I were very strategic in building this into the agenda, but also at the end in case someone didn't want to participate. But everyone in this room has experienced grief in some way, even if it's not a loss. So you can still participate and get something out of this activity. So you can pick a table, get to know new people. Or if you want to stay in your comfort circle, you're welcome to do that too. I think Maggie and her family can make a whole table themselves. But if you want to make each Maggie go to a separate table, you can. But feel free to separate and start discussing, and Mary and I will let you know when the activity is over. So thank you, Libby. Okay, I'm going to run through a couple closing remarks. I hear a lot of chatter. We can continue it in 10 minutes and at the reception. So feel free to stay at your seats. I think I heard someone say, oh, we just ignored what Allison said. That's totally fine. We love the lively discussion. This is what we wanted, so not offended in any way. Like I said, Mary made me the bad guy. I didn't realize it when she put me at the end. She got to be the nice one to start the round tables, and I have to shut them down. But just want to run through just some resources and next steps for folks. So Lou kind of alluded to this, which was fun. We have a brand new state advocacy toolkit that we launched at PAME. And as Lou was talking about, this is a way that you can raise advocacy, put grief into action, and we're going to have a session about it tomorrow at PAME. But the state advocacy toolkit was designed to help advocates inform state lawmakers about positive changes they could make to help save lives. So we'll have this tomorrow, a little teaser to get you to come to PAME tomorrow. And some of the people in the room helped create this. So thank you for your assistance on the work group. We also have these flyers at the table from last year. As you just learned, connection is critical. So this is our list of family organizations that are connected to PAME. If you're not listed, let us know. This list is always growing. I know we added someone just last week, and we have this available on our website. And as we heard, all these organizations are doing amazing work. So if you want to get started, but you don't want to start your own foundation, here's a list of foundations that already exist that you can get connected to, or we can get you connected to. So grab one of those flyers or look at it on the website. Also wanted to share about the Danny Did Foundation grants. So they're dedicated to providing epilepsy patients access to seizure alert devices. You've probably heard a lot about how seizure alert devices can help save lives and impact those with epilepsy. There's a session about devices tomorrow. So if you loved hearing Mary talk, she'll be talking again tomorrow. And we'll have some other folks on that session. But this is some amazing work that the Danny Did Foundation does in supporting the community and work with SUDEP. There we go. The Epilepsy Foundation, as I mentioned, we have bereavement support groups. So they're held on a monthly basis, and we have them for adults and young adults. So if you're interested in those, you can talk to me as I help facilitate, or you can email sudep@efa.org. We also have remembrance opportunities in our eJourney blog, and we do awareness and advocacy efforts through SUDEP Action Day that happens the third Wednesday of October annually, and educational webinars, and also research opportunities in conjunction with the North American SUDEP Registry, or NASR. Another resource here we talked about last year, and I think we had a session about it as well at PAME, is the Preventing Epilepsy Death Toolkits that was put together to help, and I heard it at some of the tables, help patients talk about SUDEP with their providers, but also help providers be more comfortable to talk about SUDEP and epilepsy mortality with their patients. I know as a person with epilepsy myself, I first learned about SUDEP from Gardner when we were just becoming friends and getting involved in PAME. And that's how I learned about it. I did not learn about it from my provider, which is not acceptable, which I don't need to tell this room. So this toolkit helps to change that. And then lastly, we want your feedback. We've heard some great feedback. Mary and I can't remember everything though, so if you scan the QR code, which is also in your program book, we would love to hear what you thought of the agenda this year. I know Libby will tell us to have more time for the roundtable. But I will say, like I said, we added the roundtables because we heard there needs more time for connection. So we added that this year. So your feedback is important. We listen to it. We use it to craft the agenda, which we'll probably start doing next month. So please give us your thoughts on what you liked, what you didn't like, what you want to see in a future family day. So Mary and I love the feedback and we take it seriously. So please take some time to fill that out. And also thank you for who turned in cards so far, but please keep turning those cards in. I know Jeff is looking forward to hearing from folks. Next, the PAME conference tomorrow. All of the details are in your program book, but breakfast and registration kicks off at 7 a.m. with welcome remarks at 8 to 8:30, and you'll get to hear the first speaker, Libby Boyce, again. So some familiar faces will be at PAME tomorrow. And we have our reception tonight, so please come and join us. We have a little break here. I know we ran over, but it sounded like a lovely conversation, and I see my colleague giggling in the background because I put her photo on the slide. But she was our photographer today, so I wanted to shout her out. So thank you, Michelle, for your photography skills and getting photos for us today. And she's ducking even further of embarrassment, so it worked. But look forward to seeing everyone at the reception. So please come upstairs. It's up on the 3rd floor, so you don't even have to leave the hotel. And, really last but not least, Mary and I are always here. It's our honor and privilege to put this event together every year. It's probably one of the best things I get to do annually. Get to work with Mary on this and work with all of you that come here and offer support. So Mary and I are always here. If you need anything, have any questions after, if you just want to talk sometime, I know I'll get texts or, just phone calls with some individuals that are here from time to time to just listen if they just need to talk. So please take down our contact information and know that you can always reach out to us if you need anything. And with that, thank you and enjoy the reception. And Mary, I don't know if you have any last words or anything. Yeah, so thank you to all of our speakers and everything, and just round of applause for everyone. Yeah, definitely. And you can go back to your